You're listening to The Rich Life Revolution with me, Michelle Cooper. My mission is to empower you to step into your next level of wealthy. You'll hear all the deets, a little bit of inspiration, and real life takeaways so that you can create your own rich life revolution. Let's dig in. Hey there, welcome to The Rich Life Revolution. This is episode 18. We are talking with Susanne Goldstein, and we are talking about all things manifestation, how to master manifestation to become consciously rich. I am super excited to welcome Susanne to the Rich Life Revolution. Susanne and I are part of a mastermind in the Maverick community, and I have gotten to know this incredible human being very well. She is what I would call a master manifestor. And I love how she describes manifesting takes more than just wishing on a star. She knows from experience that manifestation is when your beliefs, thoughts, and feelings are aligned. And when that is true, incredible things can happen. Susanne has worn many hats, many stylish hats over time, from mechanical engineer to successful Hollywood producer and filmmaker. And of course, now she is a transformation and success coach and a social entrepreneur. Whenever a current iteration no longer serves Susanne, she sets out to upgrade herself just like software and master a specific part of herself. And in doing so, she ushers in new chapters that move her life journey forward. This is somebody I adore, and I know by the end of this episode, you're going to be incredibly intrigued and want to learn more and perhaps get to hang out with Susanne like I do. So let's dive in. Let's get our manifestation hats on and let's learn from the master. Hey, Susanne, how are you?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here with you, Michelle.
I am so excited to talk to you. You have fairly recently come into my world. For our listeners, Susanne and I are in a mastermind together. We're part of a large community of game-changing humans. And I just adore what you bring to every call we're on, and such great energy and such a fantastic creative force. So can you share a little bit about yourself with the audience so they get to know you a little bit?
Sure. I kind of have a unusual, irreverent kind of life and career. I've always followed my own path. And it's been a really extraordinary path, not necessarily things that people go, oh, I get how you got there. But instead, it's been more about observing what's happening in the world and deciding I wanted to go learn about that and then be part of the solution around that. And so I've traversed a lot of different ground. I've gone from, I started off as a mechanical engineer, and then I became a filmmaker, and I worked in professional theater as well. And then I got back into technology at the beginning of the .com era, and I helped build a bunch of startup companies as well as turn a lot of big established Fortune 100 companies into web companies, and in the process had been coaching people on how to change their lives, how to up level, how to recreate themselves, and have just made a career of that. And I've gone lots of places since then, but that's the basic gist of how I live my life. It's very much in flow.
I just love that because I feel like life is not this linear line that people sometimes expect it to be. And I think sometimes we can get caught up in this idea that changing or shifting or evolution of, who we're being or what we're doing is like, oh, I got to start all over, or it's some kind of like less than kind of option or experience or something. And I don't agree with that. I think it's all happening exactly as it should. And I love the nonlinear line. I'm sure within all of that, there's a thread, which I feel like is something to do with the flow, right?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of threads. I think the biggest one is when I was 5 years old, it became very clear to me what I was put on this planet to do. Now, I couldn't have necessarily explained that to you when I was 5, but that's what was happening. And so I think that thread of knowing that I was put here to help make the world a better place, even though I didn't necessarily know what it meant, has always been at the center of my life. And so whatever I've been doing, it's been through the lens of consciousness, the lens of awareness that I'm a human on this planet and I'm supposed to be somehow figuring out how to help people unblock themselves, get where they want to go. So I think that's been one really big thread. But it's interesting because you said the thing about change and how so many people think that's like a step backwards. I remember when I was leaving the film industry, I had produced my first Hollywood movie when I was 27.
Well, that's amazing. Oh my God.
Thank you. I was leaving Los Angeles. I was actually putting one foot in San Francisco to see what was happening in this brand new world called the World Wide Web. And so I kept a place in LA, moved up to San Francisco, but I had a going away party because I was really stepping out of the film industry in the way that I'd been in it. And I remember sitting at this picnic in Griffith Park in LA, and this guy says to me, "How are you going to leave the film business?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "How do you do anything after the film business? Like, what job could you possibly have?" I was like, "I guess anything I want, but I'm going to go try this weird thing called the web." And he was so astounded that there wasn't a sure next step. And for me, there's never been a sure next step. It's just always been the next step. And I think that's how we move with courage. I always say that a lot of people say the bigger the why, the easier the how. I say the bigger the why, the bigger the courage. And that's what happens. It's like I was in the film business. I was no longer satisfied with the kind of work I was doing there. I wanted to be surrounded by really cool people doing things that were making the world a better place. And I wasn't doing that at Disney. And so I decided to change. And for the people who were in that space with me, they're like, "Oh, how do you do that?" And I couldn't wait.
Right. And like walking away, like where you were, I'm sure, is where lots of people like strive to be. And you're kind of like, yeah, I'm going to go try this thing, the World Wide Web. Like, who knows what that is, but I'll see what happens. And I bet there were people who were like, what are you doing? You're leaving this? Like, you have what other people desire, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true. And for me, I do something as long as it feels aligned. And that goes back to the flow thing, right? If something no longer feels aligned, it's time for me to go reinvent myself again. And so ever since I was 27 years old, I've been doing this thing where I upgrade myself like software. And so what happens is there's something I want to work on or something I want to integrate. It's not like an upgrade like, oh, I just want a fancier car. It's an upgrade like I want to master this part of myself. I remember the first theme I ever gave myself, I call them themes, was to only be dramatic when drama was necessary. And this was because I was working in the film business and everybody was so full of drama all the time. It's like, what do you think of this? It's the worst. It's the best. It was just the extremes all the time. And I noticed, because I got into that industry so young, that I was starting to become like that. And that's not what I wanted for myself or for my life. And so I said, okay, you're going to have this tendency to have drama. And so what if we spend a whole year learning to be dramatic only when it's necessary? And so it became this kind of game I played for a year where the first part of the year I didn't even notice when I was being reactive. But then by April, I started noticing that there was this little millisecond between something happening and my choice to respond or to react to it. And there wasn't a lot of personal growth stuff back then. I'm talking in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's not like you could read a book or listen to Tony Robbins or do something. You could figure it out on your own. And so I realized that there was this opportunity to become choiceful in my life. And it really set me on a path where every year I could upgrade and up level. And it's like your phone, you got to upgrade your software. Why not upgrade your brainware? So I do it all the time.
That's so awesome. Do you know what your human design is?
Yeah, I'm a generator.
Do you know what your numbers are?
I'm a 1-3, and I'm emotional authority.
Yeah, like you're so clear on what you're here for, right? Like, and it sounds like that kind of came through to you very early in your life. And I know so many people really, they struggle with that. Like, why am I here? What's the purpose? I want to have this big why. I want to have this big purpose. And I too struggled with that for years. Like, I feel like I walked through a lot of my life just numb, right? And not really understanding how the world works and how the universe works with us, how we manifest our reality, right? And as I started to learn that and learn about myself and like the importance of self awareness, right? Then I learned about my human design. I'm a generator and I'm a 6-2. So 6-2 is the exemplary human and the natural. And it's so crazy because I've always said, I just know things and I don't know how I know them. Right. Or I'll just know how to do something or know how to figure something out. Like literally somebody can ask me something in my business about taxes and I'll be like, oh yeah, da, 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 da. I don't really know how I know that, but probably right. Just Google it maybe. But I realize the importance of understanding ourselves. And it sounds like you have understood yourself from a young age.
I have. I mean, I can't say I was good at it for a long time. I was trying to be better at it. I had a pretty rough childhood and I had a lot of trauma that I brought into my adult years and had chronic PTSD. And it took me decades to heal from it because I spent a lot of time with victim glasses on. And I didn't know how to take them off and put on victor glasses. And I would say that that's one of the biggest lessons I ever learned in my life. And you learn it because I think that when the universe selects you as a spiritual being having a human experience to go on this journey of life with a purpose, and the purpose was really baked into me from a very young age, the universe then hands you every test you need as moments where you can prove it. You can prove that you're worthy of this mission. And so I was tested in every way one can be tested in some really bad ways. And I did not win for many, many years. But what happened for me, which is kind of crazy, is in a non-clinical way, I kind of bifurcated myself. Like by day, I was a badass. I could show up and be a filmmaker, be a technologist, be a coach, be a consultant. And at night, I'd go home and I would crumble on the couch and cry and be miserable. And I was like, I was two separate people. And it wasn't until I really started integrating these parts of me that I could heal. And so even though I was given this big mission, I was also given every test to prove it, that I'm worthy of the mission.
Yeah, I think you were actually the person who gave me the words prove it moments. I think that was in a mastermind call, and I have a sticky note on my monitor that's like prove it moments from our call, I think. And that was like when you kind of gave me that little piece of gold, I was like, oh, right, this is a prove it moment. And I know one of our fairly recent past masterminds, I was very emotional, very overwhelmed with some things that were going on in the world around the slaughtering of whales. And although I love environmental activists and I love the people who are like the boots on the ground, I adore them. That's not how I'm showing up in my world today. I support those people 100%. But, my business is money and it's supporting people in their business and their entrepreneurship journey and stuff. And so I had a hard time connecting this thing that was so important to me and like really made my heart ache with people say it connects to your business or, I don't know, all these things it connects to, right? And so our mastermind has really helped me make that connection. But one of those prove it moments in that recent call was like, well, prove your commitment to this, Michelle. Like it clearly, I was crying, like I was visibly upset about it. And I had a hard time for like more than a week. And it was like, okay, this is a prove it moment. How committed to this am I? And like I had made a commitment a couple of years ago that I wasn't going to eat from the ocean anymore. And I grew up in a commercial fishing family where fish and stuff was our thing. I was no longer going to eat from the ocean. I love sushi, right? So like it's a big commitment, right? But at the same time, I am committed. It's a prove it opportunity, right? It's a moment in time. And I think it's such a gift when we can look at these things in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And, I have this belief. I have a company called Dare Human, and one of the things that we really stand for is that we believe every single person on the planet can be a force for good in the world. But they have to become a force for good in their life first. We got to go through Maslow. We got to get through certain stages before we get to, transcendence and beyond. And one of the things that goes with that is that if we can take and activate these people around the world, whether we get half of the people on the planet or a quarter of them or 1% of the people on the planet, to figure out what their one thing is. And your one thing could be tiny, like you live in a neighborhood and you've noticed there's a lot of older adults and there's no bench for them to sit on when they go out for a walk. And if your one thing is to rally the neighborhood, get a bench put in, like, bless you. That's your one thing. You did it. It's amazing. It's on your path. Good for you. If your one thing is to save every manatee on the planet, then bless you. That's your one thing, right? It's about each of us activating at the level of something matters to me. Because when one thing matters to us, more things matter to us. And so many of us are walking around life kind of inured to all of the badness happening. I mean, you think of what's happening in the world today. There was just 2,000 people killed in a flood in Libya and 2,100 people killed in an earthquake in Morocco. And that's 4,000 people who've lost their life overnight. And there's a lot of people who don't even know that's happening in the world. And I feel like part of our work as light workers, as justice warriors, as climate activators, as people who care about what I call people, planet, and then profit, is get active about one thing. We get active about many things. We start noticing the world around us. And there's a huge part of self-awareness that is about outside of self. We often think self-awareness is just me figuring out me. But it turns out self-awareness is actually noticing what's going on outside of us as well.
I love that. Like that is so powerful because I agree. Like a lot of people will think, self-awareness and the journey, it starts with you, right? And I agree with that, right? We have to know ourselves before we can know others, and we have to love ourselves before we can love others. And at the same time, we're part of a collective. And so there's us, but then there's the collective that we're part of, and the ripple effect of even the slightest little thing we change in our lives or shift we make or awareness that we have. And I only know about Morocco because I don't watch news a lot, but my brother sent me a text and he's like, there's this big earthquake in Marrakesh. I was in Morocco in October and I was in Marrakesh, and one of the girls on my trip, she actually lives there. So she met somebody there and she has now a sweetheart there. And I was just in Croatia with her. And she was going back to Morocco. And I was saying to my brother, my friend from Morocco, she actually, has a partner there now and lives there. I wonder what it's like to live as a Western American woman in Morocco, right? It's a different culture. So we were chatting about that. And then the next day he was like, there was just a major earthquake in Morocco. So of course I'm like messaging her, and then I'm like, I don't even know if she has a phone. Like, I don't know what's going on. But one of our friends from that trip, he said, isn't it amazing how the impact of travel makes our world so much smaller? And I was like, oh, that's so wise, right? Because before it would have been, oh, that place, Morocco, I've never been to. Who knows where that is, right? I don't know anybody there. I feel bad for those people, but I don't really have a connection. Now I've traveled there. I know what that infrastructure is like, how delicate it is. And I have somebody I know who actually lives there. All of a sudden, the miles between Canada and Morocco are like that. And I'm like, oh, that's just the impact of me going on holiday in Morocco.
Turns out that conscious awareness is available about every category on the planet.
So you talk about being a master manifestor. Tell us what that is.
Gosh, I don't know how this happened in my life, but the best way to describe it is the first job I got out of university. I had 2 degrees, one in mechanical engineering and one in theater and the film. And I really wanted to go into the arts, and my parents were very against it. They were like, there are so few female engineers out there. You need to go interview with all these companies. I was like, no, I want to work in the arts. So I took off and I went to the UK. Back then we called it England. And I wanted to get a job at the National Theatre of Great Britain. Now this is pre-internet, pre-email, pre-everything. And all I knew is I wanted to work there. And I didn't know anyone. I didn't know how to go about it, get a job. But all I knew is that I was going to work there. It was such a clear vision in my mind. And I could see it and I could believe it and I could feel it. And everything I thought about that I was going to be working there. I didn't know about the law of attraction then. All I knew is that I had created this, I'm going to do it. So I show up at the National one day with this backpack on because I just graduated from school, and in it I had an assessment or an analysis I had done of an Arthur Miller play, and I also had some sketches I had done from a solar engineering class where I designed a house. I was like, I don't know why I brought these things from America, but I was like, I'm gonna have to prove to someone at the National somehow that I had deserved to work there. So I went in and I walk up in my 22-year-old big blonde hair Americanness. And I go up to the woman in the backstage door and I'm like, hi, my name's Susanne Goldstein and I would like to work here at the National Theatre of Great Britain. Can you introduce me to someone who will be willing to talk to me? And she looks at me cross-eyed like I am the craziest American she's ever met in her existence. And she pulls herself together and she's like, do you have an appointment? And I'm like, nope, but I'd really like to work here. And can you introduce me to someone? And I think she just thought I was nuts. And so she says, well, we're rather busy here right now. Would you mind coming back? And I said, well, if you don't mind, I'll wait. So I took a seat in the lobby of the National and I just watched people go in and out all day. It was like, there was the door to the outside, the desk where she was, the couch where I was sitting, and then these huge doors that would open and close and someone would come in and out. And I was just trying to figure out who's who. And the end of the day comes and she's like, sorry, I couldn't help you today. And, but we're closing. And I'm like, okay. And I don't know what's going to happen. She doesn't know what's going to happen. Well, the next day I show back up when they open up. And I'm like, hi, I'm back. Will you help me? And so over the next few days, I kept going back to the National and I would befriend the women who were behind the desk and I would bring them tea at tea time or I'd bring them sweet. And I was reading all the pamphlets that were in the lobby and I was asking when I wasn't a bother at all. I was friendly, but not too intrusive. And I was just, who is that? Oh, that was Sir Peter Hall. What? Oh, that was Sir Alan Ayckbourn. What? That was Dame Judi Dench. I'm like, all these like famous people. And so I just came back day after day and I call it my Hanukkah miracle that on the 8th day, she says to me, I have someone who's willing to talk to you.
That's amazing.
And these double doors open. It was almost like one of those game shows. These double doors open and this man comes through and he's like, "Hi, are you Susanne? I hear you've been sitting here all week." And I said, "Yes." And he took me inside and I pulled out my backpack that still had in the same two things. And it turns out they were about to mount an Arthur Miller play. So I had my analysis of an Arthur Miller play, and they needed someone who knew mechanical drafting. And I had been a mechanical engineer, and I showed them all these drawings I had done of this solar engineering project, and they hired me on the spot. And it's the most astounding story, except for I didn't know I was manifesting, because I didn't know that when you align your beliefs and your thoughts and your feelings and take right action and don't doubt and keep going no matter what, and you're kind and decent and show up and you believe it to be true, it will become true. It's just most people give up in the journey. And so I didn't. And that's been the story of my entire career, my entire life. And I think the reason why I've been able to flow from this thing to that thing is because that early experience showed me that I can create my own world. And so I call this concept carrying a paintbrush. And the idea is that everywhere you go, anytime you want to meet someone or try something new or do something, you carry this imaginary bucket of paint and a paintbrush. And when you notice the thing, you take out your bucket of paint and your paintbrush and you paint a doorway. And then you make sure to paint a doorknob. And then you open this door and you do what I call create opportunities for lucky things to happen. And when luck happens, you're good and kind and decent and in alignment and have good beliefs. And it's incredible how much people will help you. It's incredible how much you can accomplish in the world when you believe in yourself. And that's how I rolled. It was the most incredible thing. And yeah, it's how I learned to manifest.
That is amazing. And such an incredible story. And I agree that most people, when they're thinking about manifesting an outcome or a desire, I find that most people, they have a timeline in mind for that. And if it doesn't happen, like if it didn't happen, you didn't get the meeting on the first day, a lot of people would have been like, I guess that's not the thing. But you kept showing up, like 8 days, that's a lot. And, if somebody showed up at my office 8 days in a row, I'd be like, this person really wants to work here. Like, let's talk to her.
And I tell people nowadays, don't do this because they'll probably put you in jail. But back in it was the mid 80s, and it was a different world and it was a safer world. And I moved to the UK by myself at age 22. And I don't know, it was just the world was my oyster. And I just always believed that. And it's always an interesting thing to think about. I was so emotionally broken and yet I could manifest. And that's just a perfect example of we're a spiritual being having a human experience. Because my spiritual being had it all together. It's just my human had to figure out how to catch up.
Completely. That's a very powerful story and so inspirational because, like you said, in today's world, you might get charged with stalking or something, but it is a good example of taking that right inspired action, taking that step with probably what intuitively felt like the thing. This is the pull. It's so, so powerful. And I really encourage people to think and feel into these desires that we have, right? Because they're only yours. They're not anybody else's. We both may desire to go to Croatia, for example, but I have my own individual desire for that. It's not going to compare exactly to somebody else, right? So they've only been given to you. It's our responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, we're given ears, right? And the whispers from the universe, from our intuition, I think they're one and the same. Our intuition and whispers from the universe. It's like if you embrace silence, which so many people in today's society are terrified of. Like I do my own personal silent retreat every year. I just turn everything off and I go somewhere and I go into quiet and I just listen and I ask for, guidance and I listen to hear what's showing up. And I think when we do that, we have an opportunity to hear above the street noise and above the social media noise and above the TV noise and the media noise. And just we get to hear our own thoughts and then we get to hear what's beyond our own thoughts. And I think we don't take enough time to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And so, so valuable. So, when we were talking about recording this episode and we were talking about your story, what you feel called to share, and something that came up is this concept of consciously rich. Tell me about that.
So, once you become conscious, and when I mean conscious, I don't mean just the idea that I can think about the fact that I'm thinking right now. That's what true consciousness means in the scientific sense. But once you become aware, once you start seeing the world as 360 degrees of things I can notice, you start to realize that not only is stuff not as we think it is, like I'm a big fan of the Matrix movies, and that we're living in a construct that was designed by a certain group of people to benefit a certain group of people and to work a certain way. And I'm a woman who grew up in that world and certainly was harassed like all women have been and have been treated badly and hit glass ceilings and all of the things that go with it. Once we start to realize that's just a system that we bought into, we can start to become conscious. And with that consciousness, you begin to realize that there's so many more kinds of wealth than money. And a lot of people chase money because they think it's going to buy them happiness, but it's not. I know lots of rich people who are not happy. And I know a lot of really destitute, poor people who are. Money has nothing to do with happiness, but we chase it for power, we chase it for fame, we chase it for what it can buy for us. But there's so much richness around us. And when we think about life from all of the different perspectives of richness that we can create in our life, let's start with the easy ones. You can have a richness of health, but you can also have a dearth of health. Right? And that's just about changing your awareness. Unless you were born one of those athletic type bodies that has stayed that way since you were 12, you have to pay some attention to this vessel that we've inherited and we're borrowing for a while, right? And there's wealth in community. There's wealth in relationships. There's wealth in giving. There's wealth in service. There's wealth in actual making of money. But there's so many different kinds of wealth that we can talk about. And I call the holding together all of those things being consciously rich. It's like a tapestry of all of the things that can make up a happy, fulfilled life. And money is one component of it. But I truly believe in the bottom of my heart, money is just a form of energetic exchange. It used to be that I would bring my pile of hay and you would bring your goats to the market and we'd swap them. But it got really hard to figure out how many goats is worth a huge pile of hay. So we created coinage and then we created money, and it's just a form of energetic exchange. So if we're in a constant play with the universe for exchange, it's like money always finds me because I'm exchanging energy all the time. And if we stop chasing the money, because money doesn't want to be chased, it wants to be held, it wants to be appreciated, but not just in its monetary form, in all of the versions of it. So that's something I love to teach, something I love to talk about, because I think it's a really important addition to the conversation about wealth.
Absolutely. This whole podcast is creating your version of your rich life, right? Whatever that is for you. For some people, that might be piles of money. For other people, it might be health, or to be in a really phenomenal relationship, or to travel the world, or I don't really care what it is, but getting clear for yourself on what that actually is. What's the experience that we want to have? And I don't know, for me, I always think, yeah, for sure, people are chasing money, but it's the meaning that they're chasing, right? What's that actually mean to you? The year my business hit $1 million, I wasn't ever trying to build $1 million business. It happened. And it's not like I didn't want it kind of thing, but I wasn't oh, we have to do this because, this is going to mean, I don't know, we're successful or whatever it is, right? It's educating ourselves and knowing ourselves, like what is the experience of wealth that we want to have. And I want more women to have more money because women spend money differently. They impact the world differently with their money. And I think our world needs to change. Like, I love how you just described the world we live in is a construct. It's created this way. We go to school in this format for this many years. And I understand now that schools were created to create factory workers. And, that's what we needed for the Industrial Revolution. And that's totally fine. But it's not necessarily what we need now. We might need some of that. I don't know. But it's this construct, like we're kind of, we came into existence and this is where we're at. But we don't have to necessarily buy into it. I'm a fan of, the Matrix movies as well. And, I have a daughter going into law and another going into criminal justice. And I'm like, you can do whatever you want. You get to decide. I don't know what that is for you, right? But it doesn't have to fit in the box.
I'll take it one step further. By the way, congratulations. That's amazing what your daughters are doing. And I love that they're picking those fields. It's just juicy. I don't believe there's a box. I think the box is part of the construct. So people say all the time, think outside the box. And I'm like, what effing box? What box? There's no box. We're just asking ourselves to play small. So if you get rid of the idea that there's a box at all, and you can write whatever rules you want, you get to live however you want. I have a fascinating life. So here in my home in Boston, my roommate is my ex-boyfriend, best friend. My ex-boyfriend is my best friend and he's my roommate. And most people hear that and they're like, are you insane? And I'm like, you know what? I'm a woman of a certain age. I've got an amazing platonic husband. We have committed to being in this friendship, partnership, soul brother, sistership for the rest of our lives. What we realized is when we were together, it was part of a construct. I was single, he was single, we were attracted to each other, we got along really well. But the relationship part never quite worked for us. It was the bigger relationship that worked for us. And yet, a lot of people think we're nuts. And recently, we hosted his daughter's graduation from high school, and his ex-wife was here, his ex-mother-in-law was here, his current girlfriend was here, and I was here. And we were one big happy clan. But most people can't even imagine that because the box is so small.
I agree. My ex-husband and I, we consciously separated. He's one of my best friends. We talk all the time. Sure, it doesn't mean we get along all the time. Doesn't mean we agree. We're co-parenting 3 kids, right? Like there's going to be conflict. But we realized that similar to you, the relationship part didn't work. I still love and care for him immensely. And I only want what's best for him. And I feel he feels the same. Other people can have judgment on that. But to me, that's part of my rich life. I have this amazing relationship with this person who helped me bring into the world 3 amazing human beings that are going to have a credible impact in the world. And that's awesome. So we can celebrate that instead of like other situations where I guess it's the drama of it. And that's within the construct of like what we would call normal or something. My best friend Wendy always says, normal is a setting on the washing machine.
I love that.
Yeah. And she's the one who taught me that. I was like, oh, that's a construct. It's kind of like the paradox of wealth is like, is there even such thing? I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, that's interesting.
I truly believe if you live your impact, the income will come. If you live your purpose, the profit will come. If you live your mission, the money will come. Like, I think we have it all wrong. That, people think if I make the money, I can go find some purpose. If I make the money, I can live my passion. If I make the money, I can give to charity and have some impact. What if we turn the whole equation around? What if that's part of the bill of goods we've been sold? You got to remember that back in the days, People didn't want other people to read because they would have too much power, right? So there's still a lot of stuff going on in the world where whether people do it consciously or unconsciously, and when in that case I mean the brainwave, it's just these systems and settings are out there. You're like supposed to grow up like a Barbie doll, crave a Ken doll, go to school, get married, have 2.2 children, a white picket fence, a dog, and a half of a cat, like all of these statistics of who we're supposed to be. And it's just all garbage. We get to be whoever we want to be.
Totally. I was listening to a podcast last weekend, and she was saying how she was like, it was like manifestation and law of attraction. And she was saying how these universal laws, the way the universe actually works, the quantum physics of the world that we live in and stuff has always been known, but it's very powerful. So the people who back in the day kind of thing who knew about this stuff didn't necessarily want everybody to know how this all works, right? Because then let's say it's a royal family. If they know how the world works and how we create our reality and the quantumness of life, and they shared that with everyone, well, they might not have the control over the people. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. Like,
yeah, it wasn't until the 1930s when the literal double slit experiment, and if anybody doesn't know what that is, like go Google it or YouTube it, you'll see the double slit experiment that shows that the field of possibility is infinite and it exists at all times and all places. And that sounds crazy, especially after we had an Oscar winner last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that movie, which was so brilliant and weird. But the idea of the double slit experiment was that you could have something that, when observed, it's a particle, but otherwise it's a wave of probability. Start to realize that everything, including this conversation, is happening in the multiverse. And every time we're talking in the multiverse, it's a different conversation. All of a sudden, you're like, wait, why am I satisfied with the crappy life I'm living? I desire to pluck a piece of that out of the multiverse and bring it into this reality because I can create it. But most people don't feel that powerful.
Well, yeah. And I guess part of that is the conditioning, right? It's the conditioning that we grow up under. It's the traumas that we go through. It's all the things. I was just talking to a friend and she said, well, Michelle, I am a people pleaser. And I'm like, that's a pretty strong I am statement to make. That's your conditioning. I don't think like you are a spiritual being. You're not a people pleaser. That's just a label based on an experience that you've had. It's not what you are. And she was like, what?
Yeah, it's a wounded experience. Yeah.
She's like, mind blown. I don't even know what to do right now.
And I think that's because people don't even understand that their wounding is who they become. As opposed to, I mean, you said it best, the answer to the question, who are you, is I am. There's no qualifier needed. And if anybody wants to learn more about this, there's a really beautiful book called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Mind, Lessons from the Tao Te Ching by Dr. Wayne Dyer. And he really goes into making the lessons of the Tao Te Ching understandable. And the answer is the more you give, the more you receive. And when the question is, who are you? The answer is I am. I'm an empty cup, and I take away my judgments, and I take away my criticisms of everybody, and I take away my comparisons of everything. I'm an empty cup, always waiting to be filled with the next piece. That's all I am.
That's so good. And one thing that you said, which really struck me, was the most important kind of wealth is the receiving that comes from giving. That to me is a mic drop.
I can't take credit for it because that's from the Tao. The greatest receiving is in giving. And you know this. We all know this because when you're in that place where we can't see anything, we're so in our own, eating our own dog food, in the victim mode. I always say, you got to take off the victim glasses and put on the victor glasses. But when the victim glasses are on, you cannot see very far. But when you're in that space, you're in that bad place. If you go volunteer at a soup kitchen or you go help the lady across the street with her groceries, you get way more than you gave.
Absolutely.
And we all know that's true.
It can be the smallest thing. Yesterday, I was in the lounge at the San Francisco airport, and there was an elderly lady and her daughter, and the seats were all scattered around and stuff, right? And I was like, oh, let me get up and move because there was a seat beside me, but then one way over there. I was like, you can have my seat. I'll go sit over there. And she was like, no, no, no. I was like, yes, don't even, like, it's not even a thing. Like, just have a seat. I'm totally fine. And the daughter came up to me a little bit later and she was like, thank you so much. My mom was really nervous about sitting on her own. And I was like, it's totally cool. And she's like, but like we walked around here looking for two seats together for like 15 minutes. And I'm like, it doesn't, like when people think about giving, they think that it's this big thing all the time, right? And like you said, it could be helping somebody across the road. It could be giving up your seat to someone. It could be 50 cents. Like, I don't know. It can be the smallest thing. It doesn't have to be this big, huge, monumental, I'm going to donate a gazillion dollars to something or buy an airplane or something. Like, smallest thing.
You know what the biggest giving is, I found? Is just being present in your own positive emanation of energy. Because by being you in that space, by elevating yourself to a higher level of energetic being, because emotions have energy, emotions are energy in motion. And so, low, slow energy drags everyone down. It's like cement. But vibrational energy, like joy and love and positive expectation, like people feel that. That's the it factor people talk about. Oh my God, she's got it. What is it? It is that she vibrates. And people want to be around that because they feel better being in your vibrational field. The best giving is just to be that. You don't have to do anything. But if you can't quite get there yet, yeah, giving up a seat on the bus or just being aware that there are people around you who might be in more need than you are at the moment.
Oh my God. The other day, I saw a sign. It was in a shop window and it was like, every single person is navigating through their own situation right now that you know nothing about. And so it was like, so don't judge. And I know in my company, like no judgment is one of our core values because I always say to my team, you don't know what's going on in their life. We never know what is going on. So we just don't judge. We just accept it as it is. This is how it is at this moment. We don't have to have an opinion about it.
It's hard for humans to do though, right? They feel like they have to.
It's ego and it's importance and it can be victim or bully or whatever part of the drama triangle you want to sit in. But yeah, this is an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Susanne. I'm so grateful for you. If people want to know more about you, how they could work with you or get more of you, what do they do?
I think the easiest way is probably to go to Instagram, where I'm at follow Susanne. Susanne is spelled with Susanne, so follow and then Susanne. I'm kind of there everywhere. It's my little calling name. I also have a pretty vibrant Facebook community, and so if you want to come over to Facebook, just spell my name out, you'll find me. And my website is the same. It's myname.com. SusanneGoldstein.com. So there's lots of ways to find out about what I'm working on and what I'm doing. I run lots of programs. I have tons of recorded material for people who are self-studiers. And more importantly, like we're building a movement. The Dare Human movement is something where we really want to show people that they can be a change maker. You don't have to donate a building at a university or do some extraordinary feat to be a change maker. It can be in the everyday. And if we got more people in that consciousness, our world would change.
And I think our world could use a little changing. So there's that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll put all the links and all the stuff in the show notes. So, really encourage everyone to check out Susanne, incredible human, doing incredible things and an amazing impact in the world. So, I'm very grateful for you and all that you bring. Thank you so much.
And I am of you, and I'm so glad we met in that mastermind, and it continues.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. If you've been following the Rich Life Revolution for a while, you already know that when I say rich, I don't exclusively mean lots of money in the bank. Obviously, there are so many benefits to building your financial wealth, but Susanne and I today definitely saw eye to eye when it comes to the multitude of definitions of wealthy. Your rich life is whatever you decide it to be. And Susanne uses the phrase consciously rich. And this really resonated with me. Remember, she said, once you become conscious that the world in which we live, with all its stern expectations and socially acceptable, inevitably linear trajectories, is not a universal truth, but a construct built by people with power, you can begin to recognize the vast range of wealth that surrounds you. I adore that. I am taking that little nugget of gold into my life, and I would love to hear what resonated, what jumped into your ears and landed in your brain or your heart or your gut and really resonated with you. Remember to tag me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and I'll be sure to answer any questions and comments. Thanks for joining us. And don't forget that the Rich Life Revolution is a weekly podcast. Next week, on episode 19, I'm going to be talking about the rules of the subconscious mind. Thanks for hanging out with me. I hope you got at least one gold nugget today. Be sure to grab your copy of the Rich Life Revolution workbook to help you set the foundation for your next level of wealthy. Get it now at richliferevolution.ca, and I'll see you later.